can survive without oil, but you can't survive without water. And the next wars won't be fought for pipelines and they won't be fought for borders. It'll be for a glass of water. And these aren't future wars, they've already begun. So, from places like the Nile to the Indus, from Arizona all the way to Aleppo, the wells are drying up and the stakes are rising. So, to give you some perspective, only 0.5% of Earth's water is fresh and accessible. And 70% of the global fresh water is consumed for agriculture. And of course, population is rising and climate change is basically causing the climate to collapse. Now, on top of that, the water tables are also collapsing and aquifers are being overdrawn. Major cities like, for example, Cape Town, Sao Paulo, Mexico City have already faced a day zero scenario. And groundwater reserves that took a millennia to fill are vanishing in decades. We think of water as something eternal, but it's vanishing. Now, to give you some, I guess, global flashpoints where this is taking place, you could look at places like India, India and Pakistan. So we have the Indus River, and this is a system that flows from India to Pakistan. And India has upstream control, and they're building dams, and of course, they have leverage, of course. And Pakistan, they call these Indian projects an existential threat. If you go to North Africa, for example, you have Egypt and Ethiopia. And again, the same problem. Ethiopia builds, for example, the Grand Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile, and Egypt calls it a threat to national survival. And you don't have to go that far either. You could just look right here at home in the USA. So if you go out west, the Colorado River is drying up. You have places like Lake Mead and Lake Powell, and these are basically near dead pools by now. And we have states that are fighting over rights over these reserves. And we have also farmers versus cities. So it's also becoming a problem here domestically. If we look out in the Middle East, places like, for example, Turkey or Syria or Iraq, of course, Turkey being the more dominant superpower in that region, they control the Euphrates and Tigris headwaters, get upstream, and the dams reduce the flow of water to Syria and Iraq, which of course increases instability. I think in the old world, kings fought for land, but in the future world, they're going to fight for the rivers underneath it. Now, another thing I want to bring to your attention is water as a commodity. So in 2020, Wall Street began trading water futures. So corporations like Nestle and Voila and Suez, what they do is they buy groundwater rights, they bottle it, and they sell it. Matter of fact, in many countries, it's illegal to collect your own rainwater. So water is now a global commodity. And then we have privatization, which that equals basically poor communities who lose access to their own lands that have water. So in Bolivia, for example, in 2000, about 25 years ago now, they had protests against water privatization, and that sparked mass unrest. So I think the next empire won't be built on oil rigs unless we can leverage our technology and catch up. It's going to be fought, for water rights or built on water rights. Now we do have technologies that are improving or scaling, but it's not salvation yet. So, for example, we have desalination that works, but it's very energy intensive. And we have countries like Singapore who are recycling water. Basically, to give you an example, they're getting sewage water and making it into potable drinking water. It works, but it's expensive. And we also have atmospheric water generators that exist, but the scale is still limited. So the rich, like, they can afford anything and they can afford clean water, but the poor eventually can't. and the tech will widen the gap unless it's distributed fairly. You have to consider these water rich countries, places like Canada, Brazil, Russia, they will have a strategic advantage. And of course, like always, the powerful will drink and the powerless will have to migrate. Now, on a side tangent here, Russia's water reservoirs or reserves, if you will, are in Siberia. Now, what's interesting about that is Siberia historically belongs to China, and China's going to have obviously a fresh drinking water crisis as well. So, if Russia claims rights historically to Ukrainian lands, places like Crimea and the Donbass, and China watches quietly, to see if Russia's successful, presuming they are successful, which I don't think they will be. Um, what happens when China decides to cash in and say, well, Russia, Siberia historically is ours. So just a side tangent there on that. But again, these countries like Canada, Brazil, Russia, water rich countries, they'll definitely have a strategic advantage in the future. Now, another thing to consider is that was in 2010, the UN declared that water is a human right, or the access to water should be a human right. But even till today, billions still lack access. And the world is splitting between those who see water as a right and those who see it as property. Now, what's going to happen is climate refugees will rise as, the climate warms up and agriculture collapses. And if we don't fix this problem, wars will no longer be over flags, but over wells. And corporations versus communities will have a new battlefield, right? An ethical battlefield, if you will. So you have to ask yourself, who owns the rain? Who owns the rivers? In a privatized world, even thirst becomes subscription. And you have to pay for it. You know that the first wars were fought with sticks, and then we upgraded to swords, and then to drones. But I think that the next war might be fought with pipes and pumps. And it's not going to be televised. It'll just be a silent war, like silent taps. But I don't think the end comes when the last well is dry. I think it comes when we stop believing that everyone deserves a drink of water. So I hope that's informative. And like always, remember to lift more, eat more, rest more, love more, and hate less. Thank you guys.